Lieutenant Zarath of the Valoran Defense Fleet had faced many terrors in her 7 years of service. She had survived hull breaches, plasma storms, and even a close encounter with a void serpent in the nebula of screaming stars, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the creature that now stood before her on the dying planet of Kryn 4. The Titan was a monstrosity that defied natural law. 30 meters tall, its body was a grotesque fusion of stone and flesh, with muscles that rippled like tectonic plates beneath skin as hard as starship armor. Its eyes burned with an ancient, mindless hunger that had consumed 12 civilizations before the Galactic Council had finally managed to imprison it in Kryn 4's core. Until today, Zarath's entire squadron lay scattered across the battlefield like broken toys. Her energy rifle had been crushed 5 minutes ago. Her exosuit's left leg servo was completely destroyed, leaving her limping. And now, as she stumbled backward over the rubble of what had once been Kryn 4's capital city, she knew she had reached the end. The Titan raised its massive fist, a boulder of muscle and bone the size of a cargo shuttle. Zarath could see every detail in horrifying clarity. The ancient scars etched into its knuckles, the way its skin cracked and bled molten rock, the absolute certainty of her own death reflected in its burning eyes. She closed her eyes and thought of her clutch siblings back on Valora Prime. The impact never came. Instead, she heard something impossible, a sound that didn't belong in this nightmare. A grunt of effort. Human effort. Zarath's eyes snapped open. A figure stood between her and oblivion, not particularly tall by Titan standards, barely 2 meters. Dressed in the simple gray combat suit of the Terran Expeditionary Corps, without even an exosuit for protection. His boots dug into the cracked earth, his body bent slightly at the knees, and his arms, his impossibly normal human arms, were raised above his head. Catching the Titan's fist. "Impossible," Zarath whispered in trade common. The human's muscles trembled, his jaw clenched, but he held. The Titan's fist, which should have reduced him to paste, remained suspended in the air. The creature roared in confusion and fury, pushing down with all its apocalyptic strength. The human pushed back. "Lieutenant," the human said through gritted teeth, his voice somehow calm despite the impossible feat he was performing. "You might want to step back a bit." Zarath scrambled backward on her functioning leg, unable to process what she was seeing. Every database, every xenobiology text, every tactical manual she had ever studied screamed that this was impossible. Humans were Category 4 species, moderately strong, reasonably intelligent, but ultimately fragile death world survivors with delusions of grandeur. They weren't supposed to be this. The human adjusted his grip, and Zarath saw his boots sink deeper into the stone beneath him, not from being pushed down, but from pushing up. The Titan's arm began to tremble, then shake, then slowly, impossibly rise. "You know what your problem is?" the human said, and Zarath realized with shock that he was talking to the Titan. "You've been the biggest thing around for so long. You forgot something important." With a sudden explosive movement, the human pushed. The Titan's fist flew backward, and the creature stumbled, its expression shifting from rage to something Zarath had never expected to see on its face. Uncertainty. The human rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. Then he smiled, that peculiar human expression that could mean so many things. This particular smile made Zarath's scales tingle with primal recognition. It was the smile of a predator. "My turn," the human said. What followed could only be described as educational. The Titan swung again, a haymaker that could demolish a building. The human ducked under it with fluid grace, stepped inside the creature's guard, and drove his fist into its knee. The crack echoed across the battlefield like thunder. The Titan howled and collapsed forward. The human was already moving. He leaped, impossible height for someone without jump jets, and delivered a devastating blow to the creature's temple. Then another, and another. Each strike precise, calculated, and delivered with the kind of violence that spoke of evolution on a world where everything wanted you dead. Zarath had read the reports about Earth, of course. Every officer had. The death world that had produced humanity, gravity 1.2 times galactic standard, an atmosphere that was mildly poisonous to most species, and a biosphere so aggressively lethal that humans had developed throwing weapons just to kill things from far away. Watching theory become practice was terrifying. The Titan tried to grab the human, but he was never where the creature expected. It tried to crush him, but he was always faster. It tried to burn him with its molten blood, but he simply didn't stop. The human fought with a terrible efficiency, exploiting every weakness, turning the Titan's own mass against it. Finally, with a running start that should have been impossible in Kryn 4's gravity, the human leaped onto the Titan's chest, ran up to its head, and delivered a single devastating blow directly between its eyes. The Titan swayed. Its eyes dimmed, and then like an avalanche in slow motion it fell. The crash shook the entire city. The human landed lightly on his feet, barely winded. He walked over to Zarath, extending a hand to help her up. She stared at it, then at him, then at the fallen Titan. "How?" she managed to croak. The human shrugged, that same unsettling smile playing at his lips. "You know what they say, Lieutenant? It's not the size of the fighter. It's the size of the fight in the fighter." He pulled her to her feet with gentle strength. "Besides," he added, glancing back at the Titan, "we humans have a saying back home. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. We've been testing that theory for about 300,000 years." As rescue ships began descending from orbit, Zarath made a mental note. The human species designation in the xenobiology database needed updating. Category 4 was clearly catastrophically wrong. Later, in her official report, she would write, "Recommend immediate reclassification of human species to Category 10. Not because of their technology or their intelligence, but because when the universe pushes, they push back harder, and they smile while doing it." In the margins, her commanding officer would write a single word in response. "Agreed." The Terran Expeditionary Corps member, whose name was simply Jake Martinez according to his identification, received a commendation. When asked how he had accomplished the impossible, his answer entered Galactic Council legend. "We're from Earth, ma'am. Impossible is just our Tuesday."